Welcome to the Sharpe Club. So happy to have you with me here this evening, a little bit past 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and I am blurry somehow. How did I become blurry? Am I not blurry anymore? There we go. I'm not blurry anymore. Good. All right. I was blurry. I think I was blurry because I was talking to some people who were blurring my mind, and it came up, it manifested itself on my camera. I can't believe we did that. But yes, we are here. So happy that you're with me this evening. Only a couple minutes late. Not so bad. Mike, don't get mad at me. We are here tonight to talk about something that I think most people aren't actually talking about. People have been talking about, the woman's vote or the black vote or the Hispanic vote, but people haven't talked much about just the male vote, right? What will men's voting affect this election? Should it be ignored? Is it important? Are the candidates up here, are they actually doing things that would draw men in, or is that not even a thing? And you might go, Larry, I have some ideas. I'm sure you do. But I have a star-studded panel to join us to talk about that exact issue. He is I guess I call him an activist. He's chair of Libertarian Party down in Duval County, if I'm not mistaken. He runs his own podcast. He is the man himself, DL Cummings. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you.
That's awesome. Glad to be on.
There you go. And you are awesome, DL. It's totally fine. Yes. In addition, I have here with me, he is an author and a great guy who I've met personally, had him on my show before. He's, I guess, kind of also an activist too, but more of a public speaker and author. He is the man himself, Adam Coleman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right.
I'm glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I don't know if I would add activists to that list. I don't know.
No, not activist? All right. Author for sure, though. That I know.
Yeah.
And public speaker. That's for sure you. Okay. So I got 2 out of 3. Not too bad.
Yeah.
All right. I also have to add my friend, the man who beats me up every time he sees me, but he still keeps coming. It doesn't matter what it is. Also podcaster. He's kind of a journalist, but then kind of an activist. He's kind of like both, but maybe all 3. He's all good. The man himself, Craig Jardula. How are you, sir?
Great to be here, Larry. Thank you so much for having me on. I always have fun coming on the Sharpe way.
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to bring up some stats, and I want to chat about these stats if I could. More women in America are registered to vote compared to men. The last stats I saw was something like 72% of women are registered to vote and like 68% of men, something like that. So it's a significant chunk. And then you go to voting, and that chunk stays the same. It's a little bit lower, like 68% of women vote and like 64% of men, something like that. But the percentage stays the same, even though a little bit less registered actually vote. So more women vote, and more women are registered to vote. Add on top of that, women we see, it's the largest gender gap we've seen ever since we've been paying attention to gender gaps, that more women lean left, lean Democratic than men, right? More men lean conservative or Republican than we've ever seen before. The gap is, I think it's like 18%, something like that. It's a big gap, whatever that gap is. Does that give Harris an advantage? Or is this just, it doesn't matter? Don't all jump at once.
Off over here. I'm coming off the top rope.
Oh, the top rope.
It does not, Larry. It does not, and I'll tell you why. Because it's getting back to the old school ways. New dawn, new day, new times. Definitely seems like a time of acceleration. Everything seems different this election out than just the last election in 2020, let alone 2016 and years before that. And you know that. You're no stranger to elections. But I think it is kind of really uber focusing on that old cliche, right? It's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid. So whether it's men, women, however you identify out there, everybody needs food on the table, roof over their head, clothes on their back. And I think in this particular situation, especially across middle America and some of those swing states, you're going to feel that same sense for women because they're the ones who, go to the grocery stores, keep the family household unit together.
Yeah, but hold on. Now, with that in mind, then why wouldn't it be more even? Or are you telling me that, why, if that's true, why wouldn't it be more even in a split? Why is the gap so big if it's the economy? Doesn't it have to be something else? Otherwise, wouldn't men and women be seeing, okay, we think Harris is better, or we think Trump is better on whatever economic issues they care about? You would think, wouldn't it be more even?
I would think that, but really quickly, and I'll finish my point and hand it off to your guest. I'm so sorry for taking up the time. But what people actually say in a poll or out in public is different when they get into the booth and close that door and then go ahead and vote and stuff. So I don't think we're seeing that that particular, that number in the polling. We see that gap, but once they get behind that curtain, I think you're going to see a lot of women go ahead and vote for Donald Trump, specifically for the fact that they're struggling too as well, and they're seeing how hard it is to keep it together financially. Family unit.
Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, and I'm trying to bring this all together, I'm wondering if through the media and culturally, there's more of an effort to push women to be involved in politics than men. Because everything about our culture is about, well, in the past, women weren't able to, so now we must do things to encourage them to be part of this and part of that. The first woman to do this, the first woman to do that.
Sure.
Obviously, possibly the first female president. So
sure.
I think with our messaging and I would say from a political spectrum on the left, our mainstream media is more left leaning. There is definitely more of a push to speak to women. And I think there may be more of a push to have them be part of the political landscape than men coming from our media. So there may be more of an encouragement there.
Okay, see if I get this right. What you're saying is, since the media is more left than right, and if the media is pulling women in, that's why women are more left. Did I get that right or no?
I'm just trying to think possibly as to why there might be a gap. And from what I can gather as to why there are more women who are interested in politics than men, or at least getting involved in politics, I should say. Maybe there are more women who feel that there is more for them within the political realm than men. And maybe that feeling is because it's a messaging thing. It's whether it's subtle messaging or overt messaging coming from our media or coming from politicians. It's complicated.
Hold on. Does that mean that Craig is wrong in that that will actually translate into voting, or is that just, it may not, meaning they're going to be involved, but Craig is right. When it comes to voting, they're going to vote economy.
I think for the most part, yes, I agree with him that I think the way, if I'm to be completely honest, I think the way our media talks about women's issues always comes back to abortion. And I think it's incredibly superficial. And besides abortion, what are women's issues? And nobody can ever answer that question. All they go to is, well, her body. Women, when they say their body, they're talking about abortion.
Right.
Whereas, I don't know, every woman that I know cares about how much money she has, if she's able to pay for her bills, and if she's able to take care of herself, can she take care of her children? I don't know, it's the same concern that men have too. And so I think there's this purposeful divide between the sexes as if we have completely different interests. When in reality, I think Craig is right. We have the same interests. It's just the messaging is different.
Right.
Okay. DL, go ahead.
Yeah. So I would tie both of their comments together. And I would say, like, number one, I think we have a relatively over-feminized society. And I think this lends to giving us this portrayal of what might be, right? Like, oh, so many more women are voting. Therefore, they're probably, because we think of women as wanting to worry about, women issues. As Adam pointed out, it's like one issue is explicitly, this could be considered a woman's issue. But then when they go to the curtain, they get behind that curtain, they're voting based on their families, the people in their lives, what they're seeing at the grocery store. And remember back in 2016, this was when Donald Trump and all his brashness was relatively new-ish to politics, at least it appeared that way, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to get into the history of it, but it kind of appeared that way. And what happened leading up all the way to the election, it was, Clinton's going to win. And then about halfway through the day, people started seeing numbers change. And we were like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden delivered the blow. Right. So I think both these guys, Adam and Craig, are nailing it. Like, women do get out and they are being courted, because I think we have an over feminized society. But I think at the end of the day, they're looking at the economy stupid, basically.
Yeah, everybody said you're right, Craig. Now I'm mad at them. They were supposed to say you were wrong. That's fine.
And there's more show, right? There's more show. We'll see.
No, this I'm done. We can shut down. My goal was just to make Craig look bad. It didn't work.
No, it wasn't. Stop. Larry, I learned it from watching you and listening to you. Please.
No, I'm totally teasing you. So no, I do. The thing that I bring up here though is there are issues that I feel seem to be more male, right, versus female. And what I mean by that is when it comes to jobs, don't they make it feel like that's a male issue? Like you just said it, you're right, Adam. Women have jobs too, right? But when they talk about jobs, it always seems like it's pushed towards like the steel worker guy, like that's the job that matters. But lots of jobs matter, and women have jobs too. I feel like whenever it's about jobs, it's as if it's just the man who brings home the bacon, right? And that the story that Joe Biden used to talk about, when his dad said a job makes you proud or whatever. I feel like that's it. It's almost like jobs are dismissive of women and abortion is dismissive of men. Am I wrong, Craig?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I mean, listen, I think that we have a lot of propaganda thrown at us. And I think that's kind of when they do throw this rhetoric at us, they want us to live in this certain echo chamber of what was, right? When you talk about the steel worker, we're talking about years ago when there was an actual industry in the United States before, NAFTA took place and these jobs are shipped overseas. Now, whether it be male or female, the majority of people are working in service. They're working for an app, for crying out loud, right? You know what I'm saying? So the less we talk about those things, because that's the real issue. That's the crux of the issue here. Is the fact is we have no industry in the United States. Man, woman, once again, however you want to identify. At the end of the day,
we have a military-industrial complex. Don't forget that now.
My bad. We do, right? Those bombs, they're being signed by members of Congress. I mean, how disgusting, how distraught.
Yep.
We do have a military-industrial complex that are making bombs and, dropping it on little children all over the place. But, I mean, at the end of the day, seriously, after NAFTA, and you guys know this too as well, libertarians know this more than anything, we have no industry over here. They shipped off jobs, and at the end of the day, that's the crux of the real problem. The fact is that we don't make anything, we don't fix anything, we don't even grow our own food. So the more propaganda,
but I'm going to move into that level, right? Doesn't that when it comes to jobs that make things, right? Yes. Physical jobs like that, far more men are involved in those fields than women, right? There are women involved, but by percentage, far more men are involved in those fields. Right. So aren't women more concerned for those service jobs? Aren't they happy? It's fine. There's more women in service jobs than there are men. So wouldn't they be happy with the service jobs?
Well, I think what type of service job you're talking about, right? The hospitality industry is not what it was back when. I mean, I love when
it's called pink collar jobs. What they're called. They're called pink collar jobs, not versus white collar, blue collar. They're called pink collar. It is things like healthcare, teaching, marketing. These are called pink collar jobs, and they're service jobs. And there are far more women in these jobs than there are men. There's male nurses, but there's far more female nurses than there are male nurses, right? So women dominate these jobs.
Less of those jobs, right? Because if there were more steel mills and there were more manufacturing, then we would have those other services available for those people. And at the end of the day, there'd be more money involved in those jobs. Like I said, whether it be male or female, it's about the paycheck. And Americans, whether they be male or female, aren't making that money anymore.
Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, actually, you make a good point in talking about pink jobs. I think about nursing, teachers, for the most part.
Pink collar jobs, not pink jobs, pink collar jobs.
Oh, pink collar jobs, sorry.
It's fine.
But those are jobs that usually don't experience any sort of massive layoffs. They're usually jobs that don't have, actually, they're usually in demand. I hear people all the time from healthcare are always talking about, this job ain't going anywhere. There's always going to be a need for nurses. There's always going to be a need for doctors, in the healthcare industry. And so maybe the reason why it's framed as a male issue is because the male jobs, let's just say, are the ones that are being shipped overseas. They're the ones who are being labeled as obsolete. We're talking about turning trucks.
Hold on, let's touch a piece into this then. If you're going to bring there, Trump is talking about tariffs all over the place, right? So doesn't that become a male issue? Yay, tariffs, because that means now these evil people overseas aren't going to take my job. So now I get to have a job here, which is going to be building something like Craig's. We don't build anything. So tariff everything. You'll have to make it here because it'll be too expensive to buy it someplace else. And now I bring back my jobs. So doesn't that become a male issue? Doesn't that draw more men to Trump versus Harris?
Yes, it could.
Well, I think a lot of things draw more men to Trump than Harris.
Yeah.
I mean, like just the way that the Democrat Party treats people. I mean, if you look at some of the things that they talk about, they treat people like children, like adults. Like, I mean, Trump went to McDonald's and they were like, "Oh, that was all staged," blah blah. And they made this big old issue, and it's like, yes, we know that, right? And it's like, well, he did this thing, and it's like, yes, we understand that. And I feel like I feel like there's a plethora of things that really, when you get down to it, it brings males to Trump. One.
Well, hold on. If they're treating us like children, wouldn't women also feel like they're being treated like children when they go, well,
oh yeah,
like a child? So why wouldn't they then go to Trump?
I think plenty of women will. I do not foresee a bunch of women voting for.
What I'm bringing on here is, what I'm trying to get at here, though, is I feel like, and this is only my feeling, that's why I'm asking your opinions on this.
Sure.
I feel like the way Trump is talking, his vulgarity, right? His forwardness, his literally attacking people. Yesterday, he called Harris and a shit VP, right? Like that seems to me, again, my feeling, you tell me if I'm wrong, that's going to draw more men than women. And that's going to turn some women off. Talking about tariffs tells me that's jobs. And the jobs that we imagine are male jobs. Because to Adam's point, the pink jobs aren't really going anywhere, right? We still need teachers. We still need nurses. That's what I'm asking you, DL.
Right. And what I'm saying, I think that more men will go toward Trump. I think more women now. And I just mean more men than men will go to Harris, more women than women will go to Harris. But I agree with you that, like, if you want to look at it and say which has more, like, is it going to be more men than women, comparing those two? I think you're going to see more men go toward Trump. But I just think overall, I don't think people care nearly as much about some of these other things, mean words, tweets, all this other stuff. Because one, most of us probably remember a Trump before he was in politics, and he was basically the same way, right? Like, and most women know a man that kind of acts, crass and rough at some time, right? Including my own wife. Like, I do a family oriented show, but I tell people, I'm like, look, you come over for beers, you don't know what I'm going to say, and I think that's the reality for a lot of people.
But hold on. Let me go one step further here.
Sure.
I'm thinking vibes matter. And let me go back to as early as Bill Clinton.
Okay.
Bill Clinton didn't win because of this, but boy, did it help. He literally, for those of you who are older, remember, he played saxophone on late night TV. I watched it and I thought, this dude's cool. I did. I thought, this dude's cool. Like, I liked it. I enjoyed. People who watched it were like, wow, he's cool. That doesn't mean his policies were good or bad. But some people voted for him because the guys, they called him Slick Willie. They called him the first black president. Remember that?
Right.
They called him all that stuff. They thought he was the coolest guy around. That's just vibes. And if you look at what Harris is doing, a lot of vibes. Recently, she's been changing. She's been trying to get more policy recently. But her first part of her campaign was just all vibes.
Bad
ones. But still vibes. And I think that a lot of Trump has been recently vibes, just angry, bad. Come on, the McDonald's thing's vibes. I mean, brilliant. I'm not mad at his McDonald's thing. It's a brilliant political move.
Sure.
It's vibes, right?
I don't know. I'm still running on joy over here.
See, there we go. Yes, absolutely.
You say that much. And I don't think it was a brilliant political move. I think a lot of people who buy into that back and forth BS are not going. They're going to see right past it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of Kennedy folks that were going over with the unity ticket are saying this is make America healthy again, right? The people who understand a little bit more nuance, but what's going on over here. Yeah. I mean, the action where you start on why Americans are so unhealthy. Where you start with American imperialism is McDonald's, right? In another country, when they want to protest the United States, they go break down a McDonald's, for crying out loud. That's where you start. So all the back and forth, I don't think people are buying into it, but I do think people are. And this is the problem. Bill Clinton, when he did that on our Arsenio Hall, a lot of people thought that was cool. But the intranet really wasn't around back then, and we don't have the information, the source of information nowadays to get what we have today. And a lot of people, and at the end of the day, when you look at a lot of women, all right, these are men jobs that are coming back. First off, I'd like to ask you, Larry, because I would like to know, do tariffs work? Because when Donald Trump tried this before, it didn't work. The Chinese could just sit you out. And all they did was like, all right, we'll move our factories from China into Vietnam, into Cambodia. And they actually moved factories into their neighboring countries to get past these tariffs. And they could just sit it out.
Are you asking a libertarian if tariffs work? You don't have to ask that question to me. I wasn't saying that they were good or bad. I'm saying the vibe on it is what I'm saying. You're not going to have me defend tariffs.
The vibe is, Larry, that at the end of the day, you know, whether Donald Trump's only economical plan is drill, baby, drill is going to make your energy cheaper, right? I mean, at least that's something. I mean, like I said in the beginning of your show, women go to the supermarket. They hold down the family household budget and stuff. They see what's going on. And if you bring men home for jobs and they have factories, then there's going to be pink collar services provided to them. At the end of the day, they're going to get their money that they need. They so desperately need to keep their household unit working. And they see their husband getting a job as a way of helping them out. The women vote.
Okay, look, let me grab a couple comments if I could. Joseph, thank you for being a member. You got some fans here, Adam. Psyched. Love Adam Coleman. So you got some fans. He goes on to say, Adam, I was struck by your most recent maybe interview with Candace. I love how thoughtful, honest, and present you are. We need more of this in public debate and discussion. Great interview.
Wait, which Candace?
I don't know. That's what he just said. So
because I never if he's talking about Candace Owens, I've never talked to Candace Owens. So just I don't know.
Maybe there's another Adam Coleman that looks like you. Maybe, I don't know.
There actually is.
There we go. See?
There's a Christian apologist named Adam Coleman, has a YouTube channel, and sometimes he gets my messages.
So, I hope it's the right one. I hope you didn't just mess up. So, yes. Yeah. Mike Voss is here. He says, good to see Adam again. He was at Freedom Fest this year. Yes, you were. I remember. Absolutely. So, yes. That Libertarian lady. Liberty Lady says, hey, two of my favorite Liberty mentors, Larry Sharpe and Liberty Dad. Oh, that's sweet. Yes, there we go. But Kim's the opposite. She goes, I don't know any of the three guests. Well, now you do, Kim. There we go. Now you do. And you can follow them if you want to. Follow them all on Twitter/X. You can follow Adam at wrong_speak. You can follow DL at Liberty Dad Pod. You can follow Craig at Yo Pasta. You can follow them all there if you would. That'd be great. But before you do that, you should do one thing that's very important. You should somehow touch the button known as like. However you don't touch it, nose, ear, eyeball, I don't care, any appendage, I'm not watching. Whatever you do, click the button known as like. That's how I move forward. You know I'm shadow banned all the time. Do that. If you're watching this on Twitter or Facebook, you should be sharing this. If you're not sharing it, that means you hate me. I don't want you to hate me, so please share it. If you have not subscribed on YouTube or follow me on Facebook, that means you are a mean person. So don't be mean. You're literally robbing me. Stop robbing me. You should subscribe on YouTube or follow on Facebook. If you want to super chat me, you can on either YouTube, Sharpe Way, or Larry Sharpe. You just become a member if you want to keep me going more and more. $49 per month. Click join. That is for either Larry Sharpe or the Sharpe Way. Does not matter. Either one is good. Let me grab a couple more comments if I could here. So, all righty. Peace Lodge, thank you for being a member. He says, hi, everybody. I love that. So people are all happy. That's all good. I love that. So Rick thought he was on bad weed when I was blurry. No, it was me. Rick, your weed is fine. Continue enjoying it. Don't worry about that at all. Continue enjoying all of it if you want to. Roger says, Larry, only a narcissist wears their name all over the place. Well, here it is. Every single show. That's why you're the perfect person to run for governor. Well, thank you, I think. My name is also over here. I keep it on everything. So maybe I am. Joseph goes on to say, haven't you heard? Men are not a thing anymore. And I want to bring that up because that's what my next step is. I feel like a lot of men feel invisible now. I feel like a lot of men feel invisible. And that when someone like Trump says anything that seems male-ish, aggressive-ish, masculine-ish in any way, that all of a sudden men go, oh, is someone paying attention to me? And it draws them in. That's what I feel, because I feel like so many men feel invisible. And when male issues are brought up with Harris, someone told me, hey, I think she's kind of like, misandrous. And I said, I don't think she's that at all. I think she's apathetic. I think she doesn't see men having issues as being different or even being separate. That's how I feel. And I think many men feel the same way. And it comes across as not caring about men at all and men feeling invisible. DL, you brought this up. Am I wrong here?
No, I think, I think that's actually been the case for a lot longer than just this election. I think it's been growing steadily, and I wouldn't try to, chart it out necessarily and say, okay, here's where it really, took a sharp turn upwards or whatnot. But I think it's been a sentiment for a long time. I think people started noticing, I don't know, a decade ago, they started looking and saying, hey, who are all the guys that are, who are all the people that are portrayed as loofs and bums on TV, right? In all these sitcoms. And it was always who? The man, the husband, right? And I think we thought it was funny at first, but then I think everybody started getting a picture painted slowly but surely, right? And then you have this, what I would see is a continuation of an over feminized society, at least in portrait, not necessarily in real life, but at least in portrait, like how it's portrayed. And I think,
but hold on, no, I want to touch this piece. Do you think society is actually over feminized, or do you think it is a portrayal that's not true? But I think many people would say, how can it be feminized when the top 1% are mostly men, right? Isn't that the portrayal that men are the top 1%? They run the world, patriarchy.
Yeah, well,
which one is it?
It's nice in politics to go, oh, look at all the top CEOs. But in the real world, most people aren't talking about CEOs, right? We're looking around. We're looking at the world around us. So when I first started noticing this was like, I don't know, about 15 years ago, I was at a men's group at church and we were doing a book club. And the book that we read was Why Men Hate Going to Church. And the whole book was premised on this idea that there's this certain level of feminization that's happening inside the church. Well, I started looking out.
I've heard this before. I heard this.
And I've started looking out in the world and I was like, oh, wow, I'm starting to see some of the things that I saw, detailed in this book that were specified, as it were to the church. Now I see it everywhere else. And so I think that, I think it's mostly portrayal, but I think there's a little bit of reality there, because we cater around women. So think about Mother's Day versus Father's Day, right? Mother's Day, it's all mothers are great. They're so awesome. Give them roses, sales over here, all this stuff. And then Father's Day, you get some sales, but there's a lot of messages about how men need to be better fathers, better husbands, better sons, and brothers, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Adam,
but I don't think
it's
CEO. I don't think it's CEO level. I don't think people talk about it. I don't think people care about it in the real world.
Adam, you're nodding your head. Tell me.
Well, I also want to add there are some women who celebrate being the father on Father's Day as well.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah. And because they're single mothers. So they've taken up this mantra that they're the mother and the father, as if being a father is just about providing money to a household. And so I do think that there is a level, everybody's talking about catering to women and not speaking to men, but it's an active disrespect towards men.
Mm-hmm.
It is a oversimplification as to roles that the traditional man appreciates for himself, especially when it comes to fathers. And even back to that phrase, I'm the mother and the father, it portrays that the role of the father is to bring money home. And so if you can bring money home, then who cares about the father? Guess what? You get to be the father. And it is said all those other attributes that men possess, that fathers possess, as far as raising children, they don't even exist. The mother can do all that stuff, right? And so then what we get is an over-nurtured child who never gets some sort of balance between healthy feminine, healthy masculine attention. And so, yeah. And then if we look at nearly a quarter of American children are growing up in separate homes from their parents, 80% of single parent homes are headed by women. Yeah, we have an over feminized society, and our children are growing up and becoming adults. We're seeing a lot of Gen Z kids.
Okay, but hold on. So let me touch this piece
separate
then.
from all that.
If we have over feminized society, does that mean these young men growing up are more likely to not care about gender and to vote for Harris? No worries. I'm saying, how do we, or does this mean the reverse? They go, no, I'm ignored, so Trump is being masculine, and I'm gonna go vote for Trump. And let me give you my own example. My father died when I was 11. I had no positive male role model as I was growing up. I joined the Marine Corps at 17. That saved my life. I was desperately looking for positive male role models. Marine Corps gave it to me. And I voted, my first vote was for George H.W. Bush. Of course, right? If I was 17, 18, joined the Marine Corps now, no doubt I'm voting for Trump. No doubt I would. Of course, that's where my head would be. I'd be all macho man. That's who I was when I was 18, right? I was the guy who wore the shirt that said, like, kill everybody. I wore those horrible shirts. I'm totally not that now. That's who I was, right? I would have totally done that. Are you saying, that this is going to make men more rushing towards Trump because they don't have the male role models? Or are you telling them the opposite? They're more feminized, as DL saying, so maybe they're going to wind up voting for Harris.
I think that it's actually a little bit of both. I think there are a lot of young men who are confused as to where they stand within the political realm, because even though they're men, they're not used to being around someone who's like Donald Trump, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They're not used to a brash fatherly figure or male figure. Like for me, I didn't have my father around, but I also didn't grow up around men. I was around my mother and my sister, right? I mostly had friends with women. So the character of Donald Trump, and if, let's say, if I was to take him for his word, the grab him by the pussy locker talk,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't surrounded by that. So that doesn't appeal to me personally. And I think there are a lot of men who are similar to me, who understand more so of the feminized outlook of the world than, the stereotypical masculine.
But let me give you the data right now. The data right now shows that young men and young women, meaning 18 to like 30, that young, right? The gender gap is massive. Younger men are far more conservative by percentage than younger women. And younger women are far more liberal progressive than younger men. I mean, that's the biggest gap is actually there more than any place else. It's at that 18 to 30. So I feel like the issues you're talking about are making men rush to the, I'm gonna use the guy's name because we all know who he is. We don't talk about the Andrew Tates of the world, right? The more masculine, macho men, whether you guys like him or not, but people like him. I think they're rushing towards these types of men. To your point, Adam, they're looking for, now again, if it was me, if I didn't have the Marine Corps, I might have done also, but I luckily had more male role models in my life. Without that, I might have been following Tate too. I don't know if I was 17, 18. I don't know. Craig, you've been kind of, are you mad at me now? Did I mess up? Are we okay?
No, I'm just listening because I can tell you this much. And I'm sorry, Adam, did you have something to finish up on? Because I have nothing important to say. In fact, you hit it on the nose. Especially when you're talking about a state of confusion, right? Like, I wear a tinfoil hat at times. I always believe that there's a ruling class that has a greater goal, an agenda of sorts. I believe that's why we see so much of big pharma that's involved in the family unit and with children with our drugs, right? A very confused, over-medicated society is a very easy society to control. And when this issue right here, I think that at the end of the day, I mean, we have a nation full of virtue signaling, right? Now we have to go out there and we have to state our position, even when it wasn't, even when we didn't say anything about that particular situation or it came into question. It's like we have to say right off the bat, well, I'm not a racist, but let me say this first. I have to state that right there. Right. And I think we do have a society of saying, okay, I'm for women's rights. I understand there's a history of abuse towards women and minorities. So therefore, we have to overextend it, right? And we have to be extra feminine right now. We have to demasculate ourselves because you know, the patriarchy has gone on too long. And if we want to have a fair society, we have to knock it down. I think with that being said, there comes a lot of confusion out there, especially in that younger age gap right there. You know, people are put into situations where they have to pick a team, pick a side, pick an issue. There's no nuance there. So it takes them a while for them to figure it out and come out of this whole situation with a mentality of like, hey, man, you know, I'm going to feel this way because of X, Y, and Z. I'm going to feel this way because of D, E, and F, you know? So, I mean, I think over and all, I don't know who said it, which CIA agent said it a long time ago. He talked about it when it came to our media, which we consume, and it came to it also applied, to, you know, the family unit. The more confused the society is, the better we off as the ruling class to keep everybody under control. Because everybody's then yelling at themselves, right? They're yelling at your neighbor. Why are you being such a toxic male, over the top, masculine? You know what I'm saying? We're yelling at each other rather than looking up and yelling at the ruling class. And I think this topic right here also bleeds into that same theory.
Right. It's like that meme with the fish tank, and you've got like the really exaggerated conservative fighting the exaggerated liberal inside of a fish tank, and then the fat cat sitting outside of it, kind of grinning and smiling, watching, you know, and that's basically what it is, right? Like, if you wanted a 2024 version of Gladiator on a societal scale, that's what we have right now. Right. We're just arguing over stuff. And the funny part, or the sad part, is that most of the time the arguments are not even really informed. It's just it's just people yelling. They've picked a side. They've determined which side they belong on. And I mean,
let me touch that piece. I did a show on this the other day, and I just want to show you. This is New York. A guy, I got this sent in the mail. New York, abortion rights are on the line. You got to vote for this guy because the stakes are too high. Okay. It's a New York State local election. This is not an election that goes national. There is literally zero chance of abortion rights being affected any way in New York State in the next at least 20 years. I'll bet anybody, any amount of money, whatever you want, I will say yes to. Not going to happen, right? It is codified in law in New York State. And the Democrats have a super majority in our assembly, and a Republican has not won a statewide election in my state in 22 years. Where I live, Republicans don't even run anymore. Democrats run unopposed. So no chance. But this came in the mail. To your exact point, DL, why are we fighting over that in New York State? Again, if it's a federal, I get it. There are some states where that's an issue. Not here. Right. I did it just because I'm validating what you're saying, DL. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And as long as we keep fighting each other and we fail to recognize all the areas for which we agree on. And in many cases, now, if you're if you're a super staunch conservative and you've got a super staunch liberal, you might not find too many areas of common ground. But the truth is, there's actually a whole lot more. When you start looking at the whole world, you know, if I were to go, like, I'm personally more conservative, but I have liberal friends, and when I talk to them about everyday life, we generally agree. We disagree on policy, usually the farther out from us that it gets. So once it gets to foreign policy, some of my more liberal friends and we have really, really sharp disagreements. But when we're talking about, like, how should somebody be treated in the workplace, we generally agree. Right. But we don't, but that's not, we lose sight of that while we're fighting. And so then the fact that's the ruling class, they keep going.
Let me grab Can I say something, Larry, too? Let me grab super chat real fast.
Good.
Look, Peace Logic says, thank you for 1999. Appreciate it. Grade schools K1 through 12 appear heavily affected by identity. LGBTQ+. Something has gone wrong here. I'm gay, so I want people to be what they want, but it does look like the left has lost its mind. So I'm going to bring that piece up. Go ahead, Greg. What do you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to make a statement about that little pamphlet you got too as well, because I have a lot of these pamphlets over here in California, and them talking about Mike Garcia, right? Being, he's a full he's not for pro-choice whatsoever. To you know what I'm saying? They're trying to add the scare tactics, and I had some notes written down from earlier too as well. But that particular pamphlet you had has the same effect as a mask. It is what DL was just talking about. That whole meme, right? The ruling class wants us to believe that the majority are caught in this right-left team sports, red versus blue team paradigm. No, most of us can see that meme that DL was talking about with the ruling class looking inside the glass. No, we can see that picture, except they keep highlighting the back and forth, just like they did with that whole McDonald's situation. Right. They highlighted the left and the right, and then that we all think for a second that this is how Americans are, that this is how society is. Listen, we have a problem as far as our media is consumed and where people get it from and the censorship that's coming into play. This is some serious stuff. I don't know if you know this, Larry, you probably do, but Sputnik was taken off the radio in DC. I know you've gone on a couple shows back in the past before, and also Rebel Media, not the one from Viva Fry and the right-wing one, but the left-wing one, the Ben Swan, the affiliate. They were also taken down. People like Rick Sanchez, who used to have a show on MSNBC before the mainstream media kicked him out for not playing well in the sandbox. Him, just like Larry King, they ended up at RT and these other networks. That's being taken down. The censorship. I mean, these are the issues and this is why I matriculated to the Libertarian Party and liked it so much, is because these issues are the most important issues and nobody's talking about it. Instead, they're talking about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris and the whole McDonald's thing. And that is the real big problem in every single issue. They keep us divided, fighting each other.
Absolutely. All right.
I want to make a comment on the super chat that you just put up. And this is no disrespect. I can't remember the person's name, but no disrespect to them. But notice what we just said a few minutes ago. I think it was Adam that made the point that we have to. No, it
was Craig.
Was it Craig? We have to preface stuff, right? And so this wasn't really a preface. It was after the fact, but it's like, hey, made a point. Okay, a point that I agree with. But then in parentheses, I'm gay, right? So it's like almost like we've been conditioned to have to identify ourselves so that other people know we're not the hater. We're, rather than people evaluating and saying, what are they saying? Because to be honest with you, grade schools, K1 to 12, appear to be heavily affected by identity, LGBTQ+. Something has gone wrong here. There is nothing wrong with that statement. Now, people could argue and say, I don't think it's been heavily affected, right? They could make that argument, but there's nothing inherently wrong with that statement that should require somebody in any way, shape, or form to have to say, by the way, here's who I am, so that you guys don't get too pissed. Not us, obviously, but But that's where we are as a society. It's crazy.
And I'm going to make a judgment on that. I think that's feminized speaking. To your point, DL. I think that is feminized speaking.
It would never happen around a campfire.
Yes, I would never say, as a man to you guys, blah, blah, blah. As a black person, blah, blah, blah. I would never say that. That's feminized speaking. Presenting who you are first and then saying the thing, because then it's okay. I can say the thing because I am the thing. That seems like it's feminized language. Am I wrong? Adam, tell me, am I wrong on this?
I don't think so. I don't think you're wrong about it. But actually, can I pivot slightly?
Go, please, yes.
So something that keeps popping in my head about just kind of politics in general, but we can look at it in this election. I think what ends up happening when it comes to certain politicians, especially like a presidential race, people see the candidate that's in front of them, they see someone that they know in real life in that candidate.
Okay.
Is either they see someone or they're seeking someone. So for example, I don't think it's an accident that they want us to call Kamala Mamala, right?
Yes.
And so why is that?
Is that a thing?
Yeah,
it is. Have you noticed? I always call her Harris, and I call her Harris because I call Donald Trump. Right now, when Bobby was running, I would often call him Bobby. I would call him Bobby. When I called Bobby, I would call her Kamala because that's fair, right? That was fair. But now that I say Trump, I always say Harris. And it's not because I care if her name's Kamala or Kamala. I know it's Kamala, but whatever. The reason why they went in Mamala is so you could say Kamala right. That was it, because Kamala rhymes with Mamala. That was the reason why they wanted you to do that. But I always call her Harris. That's all. So good. Go ahead, Adam. I jumped off. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think there are people who take it sort of seriously. They want her to come off as, which oddly enough, she's not. She doesn't have any children of her own. But they want her to come off as a relative, like your aunt, your giggly aunt who's going to take you out for some mimosas, right? Like they want her to kind of to come off that way. That's their way of trying to make her seem relatable, and I think that's the biggest gap, in my opinion, between the two candidates that we're seeing. Like obviously, there's all different types of gaps, but we're talking about who is more genuine. And so I think DL was saying, we've seen Trump for decades. Trump is Trump. Trump has always been this way. No, you could hate Trump, but you could say Trump has always been that way. I believe that's Trump. When it comes to Kamala Harris, we've seen in a year her change positions, her change her attitude.
It's true.
She's, when she came into Senate, she was Indian. Now she's black. Like she'll be anything and everything that you want her to be, which means she's not genuine. And when you listen to her speak, her subtle cues, like I watch a lot of shows where, they do like lie detector tests and you start reading people's body language prior to the test. Yep. And you're like, something ain't right with this person. I don't believe them. And the more you watch it, the more you get more in tune as to how people respond. And when Trump responds, like even if he might be cursing, that's really him. I might not like it, but that's him.
That's true. You're not wrong.
I don't know about that. I just think he's been a little bit more cryptic. He's been a different candidate than he was in 2016. He used to mention the donors and the ruling class all the time. We saw him in South Carolina. Remember, he doesn't even mention the donors and the ruling class anymore. He's a completely different candidate in my mind. Now he blames everything on immigrants and communism. I mean, I think it's just a completely, totally different bait and switch. Not to say that I support Kamala. I mean, I'm here hanging with Larry Sharpe because I believe the way forward is outside of the two-party duopoly. And that's why, I tip my hat off to Larry and DL for rolling in that party because, witnessing what I saw there. But at the same time, what you're talking about, Adam, is a tactic that the Democrats have kind of capitulated to, or I shouldn't say capitulated to, but have kind of pivoted to for quite some time. Make yourself relatable with the everyday voter, right? Especially where you're a victim. And by doing so, therefore, you have to create more victims. And now everybody's a victim. So they've been using this tactic for quite some time. And that's why you hear Kamala say those things. Growing up, I wasn't rich. I had it hard. I was a low to middle class family, and I had the same struggles as you. I was that little girl on the bus. Remember, she had the T-shirts made right over there. So this is a tactic that the Democrats have pivoted to for quite some time. But it's a tactic that's backfired on them somewhat. They played the cancel culture game too far. They played the identity politics game too far. They played the Me Too movement too far, right? And they even define what is sexual harassment and what is not sexual harassment. And they've drawn this law so far that they've overplayed their card. And that's why I think you do see a lot of people coming back and moving towards that Trump mentality, that kind of just, this is the hard knocks. This is the crux of it. We love our immigrants that come across the border. We just don't have enough services for them, right? That's debatable themselves right there. But that's the game that's being played by the two-party paradigm. And it's all designed to keep us in that paradigm right there. And that's what they're doing. So that's why you see Kamala playing those games that she constantly plays by making herself the victim. To me, the craziest thing is when she switches the accent. Have you guys been hearing that when she's trying to do the Southern accent? That to me is just, oh my Lord, with this woman.
But this goes back to what Adam just said versus what Trump said about Harris. Adam, you said she was Indian and now she's black. No one's going to touch you on that. But they're going to beat up Trump on that for only one reason. Trump's not black.
Well, also the way he comes across too, right?
No, he was nice when he said it. He goes, she was Indian and all of a sudden she became black. Same thing Adam just said.
Yeah.
But this is exactly our identity piece that we just talked about. The identity issue does matter in our culture. It does. Adam can say it. Trump can't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to preface, to me, her identity doesn't matter that
Correct.
much.
I agree.
It only matters from a sense, in my opinion, because she makes it so that it matters. So now it's a piece that we have to criticize because you made it a thing. But if she didn't make it a thing, if she didn't make it, I'm going to be the first this, I'm going to be the first that. and making her identity and constantly bringing it up, you know, as a person of color, and you know, then it wouldn't be a thing. We wouldn't be talking about it. And if we did bring it up, then I could understand people saying, "Oh, you guys are racist. Why are you bringing it? She's not bringing it up. Why are you bringing it up?"
Yes.
And so now we're here debating her, not debating, but now we're here talking about her identity because she's used her identity for leverage. And we're trying to figure out which one is true. And it seems like,
let me touch this piece here, right? Because I feel like, and this again, you guys think I'm wrong, I'm giving you feelings. I'm playing my feels. You guys tell me if my feels are wrong. All right. So I feel like what you're saying now, most men get annoyed.
Yes.
I think right now we're annoyed at this. Like, why stop? Like, we're annoyed at this. But I think most women don't get annoyed. I think the reverse. I think most women go, leave her alone. Let her do what she wants to do. Let her be herself. Leave her alone. Why are you being mean? You're misogynistic. You're an ist or a phobe. You're some type of ist or some kind of phobe, right? That kind of thing. Am I wrong, or am I wrong on this, or am I right?
No, you're right. It's the difference between how men and women deal with confrontation. Women are more passive when it comes to confrontation. They do things differently. Men are more confrontational. They're more overt with the confrontation than women are. So yes, they're going to be, even if they don't like it, they're not going to make it known more often than not that they don't like it. They're going to put on a face because they're going to see themselves in her, because they wouldn't like it. You know, it's a very highly empathetic way, but you end up protecting someone who's abusing something. And that's what she's doing. I think that she's abusing identity. And I think the reason why she's abusing the identity of being Black all of a sudden is because while she is of Jamaican heritage, what she is doing is using the Black American story, not the Black Jamaican story.
Correct.
And she's making the Black American story hers. And for me, generally, don't care. But I do have a bit of an issue if you're using someone else's story, just like I have an issue with Black people who use slavery as an excuse as to why they're lazy today. Like, no, do something for yourself. Just because your hypothetical ancestor was a slave, which you don't even know their name, or if they even exist, which, by the way, a lot of Black people don't have lineage of slavery in America, but that's a whole different topic. But for her to use someone else's or another culture's story to make it her own and pop up in church like, sister, yeah, like, like she's appropriating. It's literally the thing that the left talks about, cultural appropriation. She's literally doing.
What I'm hearing now, though, is several of you talked about things that, are more male than female. But I'm going to ask again, is Craig still correct? Will all of that stuff that we talked about, when those women get into that booth or get their fill, will they go, yeah, but wallet, Trump? Or will they go, no, I hate that guy. No, he's terrible. I hate the vibe. I can't stand he's a misogynist. He's an hysterophobe. No, Harris.
I think a lot more than the Harris camp is, I think a lot more will than the Harris camp is expecting. I think that's what'll happen.
He's saying I'm right. That's all I got to say, Larry. He's saying I'm right.
Yeah. So let you know, since we're talking about men, let's put this in the context of like just a husband-wife situation, right? Like how many husbands out there have been arguing with their wife, and then they decide like they've got their opinion. They might tell the guys around the campfire, be like, man, she was driving me crazy, blah blah blah. But at the end of the yes, dear, I'm gonna go and do that, right? Like because and I'm not trying to dog on men. I'm just trying to say what people will argue about, what people will have conversations about, and then what they ultimately do are not always the same. Because when you're arguing, when you're debating, there's not necessarily the cost per se. But when you like pull a lever or whatever, punch a button for your vote, once you do that, that's an action now that you have to say, do I want this or do I believe this that much? Right.
And let me cover two parts of this. First,
I will play out.
Dan is kind of on your side, but I also want to talk about what Adam talked about here, right? Dan says most middle America will vote as families, good, stable families who have discussions among husbands and wives, and then they'll connect the struggle. That
Amen.
used to be true. I remember that. I remember, back in the day, that's kind of how it was. But let me go to Adam's point. A bunch of people aren't living in the same households anymore. Those traditional families are less and less and less of them. And I don't know how much that rings true anymore.
Yeah.
And I would actually go a step further. Even if it's an intact family, we have a far more individualistic culture than we did before.
Also true.
And so the husband and the wife is a Republican, one's a Democrat. Everybody just does their thing, right? And if the kids become 18 and they go to vote, they do their thing. Everyone, so there is no family cohesion as to, in this household we believe these things. That's not a thing anymore. You'd be seen as someone who's oppressing other people with your views and ideas. Same thing if you try to have a household where everyone is of the same religious viewpoint. Why are you forcing me to believe these things? I want to believe the things that I want to believe. So it's that, that's not a thing anymore.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
that there are less of family units. Like you said, there's a lot more individuals, and we do have an individualistic society. But guess what? More people are struggling. Our generation can't buy houses. They can't get the things they want. And Larry, listen, some of the things I love about the Libertarian Party and the Fed, but go around and ask men and women in New York, just go out in the street and ask them, where does our money come from? What is the Fed do?
Right.
They don't know.
No idea.
All they know is that green gives them things they need. And at this particular stage of the game, it's a little bit different than that green getting them the extra things they want. They get them, and that green gets them the things that they need, right? And that's just the crux of the whole situation. So whether it be families or individuals voting, they're still going to vote with their wallet. They always do.
Absolutely. Well, so that Liberty lady says, I know rich white liberal women here in Duval County that will vote for Harris because they hate Trump that much. They will pay higher price at the store to make sure Kamala gets in. I think there's a lot of women like that.
They can afford it. When you can afford it, then you can make different choices, right? But like Craig is saying, like there's a lot of people that they're not in the can't afford it, and so they're going to look and say, all right, who's going to get me to that better place? Like whether they know, whether they can articulate exactly how, which particular policies, doesn't really matter. They're going to look and say, all right, who's the one that's talking in the way that sounds like my life is going to be better, right? And I say that the identity politics and all that ain't it. And I think also the code switching and all the other language tricks that basically obscure what they actually want to do, I don't think that is. And that's why I think there's an appeal for Trump, right? Because like who has ever said, well, Trump said this really mean thing, but I don't think he really meant it. I think he's actually a softy behind. Like nobody says that because they actually believe him, because we tend to believe people when they're more crass. We believe them more, right? Because who's going to put out that crass statement and risk offending a bunch of people for something they don't even believe? Like that wouldn't even make sense.
Let me grab a quick super chat if I could. Ryan, thank you for the $5. Even Kamala's TV ads are really cringe and make her unlikable. Also, the ads being peppered with lies don't help her, in my opinion. This is an issue that I feel, I've been saying this before. Harris is not a good candidate.
No.
Right? She's a bad candidate. They pick someone who is not likable, who's not good live, who doesn't really care about policy. Like she's not even a policy wonk. Like, even if you don't like Elizabeth Warren, the woman knows her stuff at least, right? At least she knows what she's talking about, if that makes any sense, right? Whether you like her or not. You look at Harris.
She's a much better liar, Larry. She's a much better liar than Kamala Harris.
Yes. I said candidate. I said candidate is what I said. I didn't say politician. I didn't say actual senator.
I misunderstood the question.
Yes.
But Larry, you do understand, like what DL was talking about, that more people do believe, honestly, that the economy is just broken. There's a lot more people today that believe the economy is broken than ever before. The only thing I can't understand is, just like before, is that why do they believe that anything was any different than with Donald Trump? I mean, yeah, you want to tip your hat off to him for trying to throw some tariffs on the Chinese at one point. It didn't work, but at least he did try and acknowledged it. I mean, drill, baby, drill. If all your economic plan is to make your energy cheaper, you're not talking about the crux of the problem. You're not talking about the real issue. And that's what we talked about earlier, is the fact is we don't have an industry anymore. Even in Hollywood, even in LA, they're losing their industry. People are going to Canada. They're going to other spots to shoot.
They're going to Toronto. They're going to Georgia.
Anywhere anymore.
Yeah, it's true. Absolutely. Let me grab, if I could talk to the people here. If you're watching, do me a favor, guys. Click the button that is like. You've been watching for this long. That means you like it. So don't be stingy. Hit that like button. Slam it with something. Coffee cup. I don't care. Whatever it is, please do so. Please share if you don't mind. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, share it, retweet it, repost it, re-exit, whatever the thing is. If you have not subscribed to me on YouTube, or you haven't followed me on Facebook or Twitter, you're a bad person. Don't be a bad person. So instead, do the follow, do the thing. If you want to super chat me, you know what's can. I love super chats. You want to become a member so I can keep doing more and more of this? Well, yeah, I want to do that. Click that join button. $4.99 per month makes everything go a whole lot smoother. Lastly, no matter what you do, follow these three gentlemen. They came on here giving you some real ideas, trying to help things out. They got a lot of cool stuff going on. You can follow Adam at wrong_speak. You can follow DL at Liberty Dad Pod. You can follow Craig at Yo Pasta to make sure that you follow them and you know what's going on. I got so many more comments I want to go through, but before I do that, DL, tell us what you're doing in general. So let us know what's going on.
So as you mentioned, I am the chair of the Libertarian Party here in Duval County. So I'm keeping up with that. You know, we're just trying to get out and, you know, keep our name active in the community in doing things when we have an opportunity. So it's a little quiet now because we don't have any candidates running. Aside from that, you know, I have a podcast, Liberty Dad, where I generally stream, you know, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. And my goal for that is just to, you know, I try to think about politics in a little bit different way. And so I try to take and go and dig up source material and then, you know, evaluate it and then break it down in a simple and easy way to understand. So I try to think of it like, you know,
Nice.
what kind of a conversation would I like to have with my son at any time, right? And so I always wanted to be informed and, you know, just something that where whoever's listening, whoever's talking to me, they walk away with something. I kind of got that from my mama years ago before she passed. She was a Republican. I became a Libertarian. I tried to convince her. I tried my hardest to convince her to vote for Gary Johnson. It didn't work. But I noticed that there were times where I would say something and she would go, "That's interesting." You know, and then I knew that like, hey,
I like it.
I got a thought, you know, I got her thinking. And I was like, that's my new goal. My new goal is just to get people to start thinking. I don't have to convince you right now.
I love that.
To get you to thinking and then, you know, let everything else take its course. So that's me.
Thank you. Adam, tell us what you're doing.
A bunch of stuff.
I know.
I'm, you know, I write for New York Post every chance I get, you know, once a week or every other week, depending. But as far as different projects, I'm working with a new media company, hopefully start up sometime soon, called Thirst. I don't have too many details to provide as of yet, but stay tuned for that. I am working on my second book. This book will be about childhood abandonment and our culture of family separation.
Nice.
And it will feature a lot of stories from my childhood, and just highlighting how culturally we make excuses for the failings of the adults, and we don't put our focus on the experience of the child. So it's going to be a very child-centered book.
There we go. Craig, tell us what you're doing.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Larry, for having me on your show again. Craig Pasta Jardula, of course, you can go over to Yo Pasta. I have my show, Pasta to Go. It's something new. One of the first gigs I ever did was the Libertarian Convention. After I came off about 4.5 months of doing the Jimmy Dore show. I've also done some work for Kim Iverson before, and I have this old school show called the Convo Couch, but we keep getting censored and being called Russian assets, and we're trying to sidestep around the demonetization and the censorship. We've been demonetized on that channel for almost 5.5 years now.
Wow.
Can't seem to get it back, so they're trying to make it hard for us to make a living. Like I mentioned about the Sputnik and the Rebel shows from RT. I used to go on those shows quite a bit because of U.S. sanctions. They just all gone away. Yep. So I'm just trying to find new gigs. I still do a show on WBAI in New York over by you.
Yep, I know it.
Do it once a week over there, trying to maybe come up
to New Westchester?
York. What's that?
So Westchester County?
WBAI New York does the greater area. What do you call that? The tri-state area over there. It does get out to West. It does get out to Westchester. It has it does have an FM signal too as well.
There we
go. Today I was just on with Kara Cashanova. She's a populist right on, I think it's 103.9 Patriot Radio New York.
There we go.
So I love it. I was on that show today talking about some election integrity. But yeah, man, I'm just trying to do my best to keep things going. So you can always go to Yo Pasta, check out the events coming up. I will actually be covering the free and equal debates where Chase Oliver, the Libertarian Party, as well as Jill Stein and another candidate will be debating. I think this is the third or fourth time they're doing it. This one's in LA and Hollywood, and I'll be covering that and hitting both Chase and Jill Stein with some hard questions.
I like it. That's great.
Before and after the debate, so I'll get them.
All right, let me grab some more comments. Kintsugi says, I totally agree with Adam. The media is overwhelmingly left-leaning. There we go. Kintsugi, I've been trying to tell you, DM me on one of the things. I need to talk to you about something. So DM me. You and I need to chat. Also, if I grab Peace Lodge, another $9.99. Thank you. So is Trump surrounding himself with people that will probably advise him? Gabbard, RFK, Elon, Matt Taibbi. Will these advisors / cabinet members make a real difference? This is an important question. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go.
No, because he's not listening to them. I mean, shortly after he had RFK join his team, he was on stage in the debate stage bragging about ventilators, right? Make America healthy again. Does anybody want to talk about the fact that we said when you start at our unhealthy habits as a society, when you start with our imperialism, you talk about McDonald's, right? They throw it when they're protesting in another country against the United States, they trash a McDonald's. It's everything about empire and us eating unhealthy every single day. Remember the whole thing with the Big Mac? The way you can leave it, it won't even decompose. I mean, he's not listening to them. And Tulsi Gabbard is not the same candidate she was. I mean, that's where I met a lot of my libertarian friends was in New Hampshire on a Tulsi Gabbard campaign. And I made these bonds that I'll never, ever lose. There
were a lot of libertarians jumped on the Tulsi train. You're right.
The protection of our civil liberties.
Yep.
She's not a non-interventionist anymore. I mean, she went to Africa with the military shortly after she endorsed Joe Biden on what she called an anti-Islamist fundamental, she went to help destabilize another African country. These are not the same candidates. They're not being listened to by Donald Trump. They have no part of their legislation. Donald Trump wants their votes. He's going to take their votes and do what he does to a lot of his contractors in New York there. Get rid of him. Move on.
DL, go ahead. Is he right?
I think so. And it's funny that you made that comment about, getting rid of contractors. If you look at his first term, he I don't remember exactly which one, but he had like a high cabinet turnover rate. Like he would bring people in and then let them go. Now I can't compare. I didn't compare that to others, but I just looked at it like just on its own. I was like, man, that just seems like a lot. Like, are you not picking the right people that are going to work with whatever vision that you have? Are you that much of a tyrant? Like, what is it that's causing you to have to kind of cycle through these? This is why even though I'm a libertarian, people are like, oh, he's going to put a libertarian in the candidate. I'm like, or in the cabinet. And I'm like, have you seen how fast people go in and out of that cabinet? I don't know if that's going to be all that impressive. Like, hey, before we finish talking about the libertarian candidate that we might get, they might be let go.
That's good. Well, Adam, what do you think?
Well, I actually want to reply to what he was saying about being able to those turnover. I think one thing we have to kind of remember is that the federal government is filled with people who work in multiple administrations. So these are career employees, whether they're at the White House or wherever, whether the staffers. These are people who cycle through different administrations.
Sure.
So when you have
it's called permanent Washington. That's what it's called. Right. Permanent Washington.
Permanent Washington. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So when you have these different cabinet positions, you have people who may have been in one particular department. A cabinet position opens, they know somebody, they apply, and they get that cabinet position or something of that nature.
Yep.
but they bounce from job to job. And so if you're someone who's in permanent DC, and what I was told by someone who in the media, but who would be more so in the know, what she was telling me was that a lot of people who were in that position didn't want the stain of Trump on their resume. Didn't want the idea of, I worked at the Trump administration, because when Trump is gone and it says your work history is working with Trump, they didn't want that. So Trump actually had a really hard time finding people to fill these roles, which is why he would appoint weird people to different roles that he just saw on TV and stuff like that. We were just thinking he was crazy. But the reality was that he had a whole bunch of empty positions because he couldn't fill them. And then for some of them, he was just like, I don't know, that guy I see on TV, how about him? You know, he's just doing everything he possibly can. So now, obviously, that comes down to him, right? He made himself, you either love him or hate him. And there's a lot of people who do not like him. And when you make the federal government your enemy, then a lot of people who work at the federal government who would normally fill these roles don't want to be associated with you.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting, because I never heard that excuse somebody's made for Donald Trump. I've heard people make a lot of excuses for him all the time, you know. But that one in particular, that's a new one. Listen, I think at the end of the day, it's
Craig. Hold on, I have a secret just for you. This is Peace Lodge. He says, at Craig, so is RFK being duped, or he really believes Trump? I'm sad and disillusioned. So what do you think about the people who are there? Does Gabbard, RFK, I mean, Elon probably doesn't care either way. He's fine no matter what happens. Matt Taibbi, Gabbard, RFK, are they being duped? Do they not care? Are they just happy with the spotlight? What do you think, Greg?
Well, I mean, that leads to the argument, are they a paid propagandist or a useful idiot, right? In some cases, it could be one or the other. But I believe that Donald Trump has the same existence and the same reasoning as a Bernie Sanders did. His only existed, Donald Trump, was to lead you back into the Republican Party. Same thing with Bernie Sanders. And that's what I believe Donald Trump has always been. And that's why he is a different candidate, because when he has the opportunity to endorse or support the right candidate, he never does. I think about the guy in Georgia, which is named Vernon Jones, I believe it was, when he was running for governor, I believe, out there. Complete had the MAGA crowd behind him, grassroots, supported Donald Trump when it came to the election system, pushed back against Raffensperger. But what does Donald Trump do? He always endorses the establishment guy.
Yes.
And he's running around with Lindsey Graham. And now we hear echoing coming, maybe from people close to Donald Trump, that he might hire Pompeo again, for crying out loud. I mean, he's never, ever really been the anti-establishment guy that people made him out to be. You know
okay, but hold on. Let me give you some pushback.
Okay.
Right? Tomorrow he's doing a Maha event with all the people together, 8 p.m.
Yes.
You see him when he was at the what was that, Al Smith dinner? He was talking about Tulsi Gabbard, talking about RFK Jr., making them feel good, all the goodies. Isn't that a change? Isn't that bringing the unity people back together?
Is he having McDonald's cater it too as well to make America healthy again? You
just got to push that, don't you?
Well, what he says is one thing, and what he does is another, Larry. I mean, the guy has a proven track record. I mean, all you have to do is look deep. Listen, most people who are going to go out and vote in early November don't understand what's going on in the echo chamber. They don't look at the things that we look at. They don't understand politics or policy, for that matter. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's so great when you see, people like a Chase Oliver get out there when he goes to a Pride event, which DL just talked about, you know what I'm saying? And he starts talking about the Libertarian Party. He starts talking about the values. People didn't know. The first time I heard Spike Cohen speak, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Because people simply just don't know. And Donald Trump can say one thing, but then act a different way. Like right now, they're trying to reinvent him as the peace candidate. Oh, he's not as much of a warmonger as, look at Kamala Harris. She's taking in Dick Cheney and all these other people. And
well, they have a point.
McCain, and look at this. But Donald Trump gave out record Pentagon contracts when he was in the White House. He signed over a ton of money and a ton of weapons to the Kiev regime and actually set the table. He gave the Kiev regime weapons.
Okay,
but
hold on.
Would give him.
Hold on, I got to tell you,
he says than when he does.
But he doesn't have Cheney. That's all I'm saying. That gives him a benefit no matter what. He doesn't have, and he fired him.
He hired him. Elliot Abrams. He hired Elliot
And he
Abrams
fired him.
in Latin America.
You're not going to
trying
get
to
him that
whack
one,
Nicolas
Greg.
Maduro. There's no difference at the end of the day. The deep state, big tech, big pharma, they get what they want, Larry. There's no difference.
All right. I'm going to change the topic because we'll yell at for another hour. Kitsugi says, I've noticed that too, DL. Church has become very feminized. I think this feminization piece is a piece. I see it in schools. I see it in most of our institutions. And not that, let me be clear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have feminized aspects of any institution. I'm not saying that. My fear is, this goes back, we talked about young men feeling invisible, right? Men feeling invisible. And then my biggest worry has always been this, and I talk about it all the time. There's around 8 million men in America now who've just checked out, who aren't looking to find a relationship, don't want to have a family. They're called NEET men. I used to state this often. It's N-E-E-T. Not is the N in employment, education, or training. None of the three. They're not in school. They're not working. They're not in some program so they can get work. None of those three. They are literally just at home in front of screens and saying, I'm done. I don't care if I make enough money. I don't care if I ever get a girlfriend or a wife. I don't care if I have kids. There's about 8 million of them right now in America. And those 8 million men are just waiting for some guy to show up and go, hey, let me tell you who to blame. Here's your armband. Please join my army.
I wonder how many of those 8 million men come from single parent homes or divorced households.
Most of them do.
Probably.
No, that's data. Most of them do.
And that's
yes.
And see, this is where this is a cultural matter. Like obviously it starts there and it trickles into all these different areas. But that's why I talk about it so much, because this is the root. Everybody looks at the Band-Aid. Right? It's like, oh, if we put this person, if we get enough money for this cause, if we do this and do that, rather than looking at what they do have control over. They have control over who they procreate with and how they manage that relationship. And so many people focus on everything they can't control and ignore the thing that they can control, which is their household and how they raise their children, if they're around their children, who they procreate with, do they family plan in the first place? And I think we've become the society that moves off of whims of emotion. I say that adults get to act like children who get to, do everything at a whim of a decision and how they feel in that moment, but they expect children to respond like adults. So, if I'm not happy in this relationship, I hear this excuse. I heard this excuse recently. If I'm not happy, my child's not going to be happy. As if that's what the child is worried about, your happiness. That's not what they're worried about. Right.
Correct.
But this is all coping. Right. And it allows for them to say, well, I'm going to drag my child behind me because they have no choice but to rely off of me, and they'll be okay. And if they show some sort of problem, we'll patch them up by sending them to some therapist, and they'll be fine, because at the end of the day, I'll be happy. And if I'm happy, they'll be happy, right? Everybody agrees with that.
Wow.
Yes,
so I get what you're saying. I do.
Right.
You understand why I'm writing this book.
I do.
I want to buy this book. Everybody needs this.
Hold on. I want to add to this. The next thing I find is our prisons are filled with men with no fathers. Yeah. There's something like 85%. It's some insane number like that. Like 85% of our prison population is males with no fathers in their life. It's some, I don't know if I made that number up, but it's a high number like that. It's in that area. It's some insane amount. You're totally correct. I'm sorry.
Can I ask you guys another question since I'm here with, I'm sorry, DL, are you a black man or?
You might be surprised how often I got that. No, I am actually of Native American descent. Okay. But there's a lot of jokes behind my nice olive skin tone.
Well, let me talk to the two black men then. They're here, and it's funny because when you use the term person of color at one point, Adam, I was like, wait a second, because a friend of mine was like, don't ever call me a person of color. I'm a black man. Get that straight. So I was like, all right, got it. I will, because I was around a bunch of leftists and I got trained to use terms like person of color and everything like that. But here's my question to you too as well, because I do have a lot of conversations with conservative, right-leaning populist men. And when I say, well, no, we do still have a racist society because black men or black people make up less than 20% of the country, but they make up more than 40% of the prison population. Isn't that right there in itself show you that we have a racist society? And that's a hard question for a lot of populist people to answer, people on the populist right or conservatives to answer, because it's like, well, there's probably a reason for that. I said, well, explain to me that.
Well, what it means is it doesn't necessarily mean it's a racist. It could be. I'm not saying it isn't, but it could just be a racist system. In other words, the system itself could be racist, even though the people within it aren't. An example I bring up, obviously, the most obvious one is Barack Obama, right? Barack Obama became the first black president. Did all of a sudden black America become great? No, the system is still the system. It doesn't just be, right. There are black cops who still kill black people, right?
Yes.
The system could be racist, even if the individual people aren't. And this is the problem with many people on the left do this. They say it's systemic racism. You're all racist. That's not how that works. Either the people are racist, in which case the system is irrelevant because the people are racist, or the system is racist. It means the people don't have to be racist. In other words, an example I give is cops. My father was a cop, so I keep this example. I never forget one guy who I met. It's a true story. This guy was undercover, and he had been around so many horrible people for so long. When he was out, I don't know how it works now, but at that time, you get time off after you were undercover for so many years. You get time off. You just would not work. They pay you. You get time off to kind of unpressure yourself from being undercover. So I'm walking with him around the Bronx, and he's pointing the finger at people who he's never met before and telling me what crime they're probably going to commit. He's prejudging all of them. Her there, yeah, she can do so-and-so. That dude, yeah, I know what he's going to do. Never met him before. Just would be pointing. He was so jaded. Why? The system jaded him. And you find that so many cops who go in, not racist or no more racist than anybody else is, right? Just the regular person. Then they spend 6-7 years, and everyone they're busting is brown or black, day in, day out. So all of a sudden, I think everybody who's brown or black is doing something. So that's a systemic issue that may not be an individual issue.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear what Adam's got to say. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my immediate question when faced with this fact is: are we presuming that these men are innocent?
Some. Well, some would be. I mean, everything is on an issue by issue, right? Situation. In some situations, I believe a lot of innocent black men will go to jail, right?
Yeah.
And in some situations, a lot of guilty black men will go to jail.
No, the presumption is, just so you're clear, Adam, the presumption is that more of black men are innocent than white men. That is the presumption, that more of them are, because they are pushed into plea bargaining, because they don't have enough cash to have good lawyers, because they get guilty because a jury of people who are not part of their class go, they're probably guilty, and put them away. So yes, the presumption is, sure, there are black people who do terrible things, of course, but the presumption is by percentage, more of them are innocent than white people. That is the assumption.
Okay. So from where I stand, because there is no perfect system, and especially when you talk about criminal justice, there's no perfect system. Are there innocent people that end up in jail? Sure.
Of course.
But I would venture to say that most people who end up in jail are guilty of the very crime that they're accused of. So if we're talking about 40% are black, my question is, are we saying that 35% are guilty? Are we saying 30%? Either way, even if I was to say that it's actually not 40, it's 20%, it's still high. But let's say it's 20%. Half of them are railroaded and they're really innocent. 20% of black American men end up in jail. They're still overrepresented. So we're saying that this small population of men, which we would say is about 6% of the US population demographically.
Right. All right. Yep.
So 6% is committing, let's say 20% of the crime. That's still overrepresentation. So where's the problem within this particular group? So is it a group issue? Is it a class issue? Is it a regional issue? And this is the complex matter. And I think the problem that I generally have with it is that we stay at the surface level when we talk about criminal justice. We make it a black issue. No, it's a black criminal issue, because majority of these people are actually criminals. Many of them are repeat offenders. So if you're complaining that the cocaine laws and the crack laws are disproportionate, then that
Sure.
sounds like a criminal matter. Because guess what? The vast majority of Black people I've met never been in jail, are not criminals. It's not a Black issue. This is a criminal issue. Now, if we say, well, how come these men are getting caught more so than the other ones? Then you could say, maybe it's partly a class issue. Maybe at one point in time, it was systemic racism. But I think we're far more in a particular class scenario where the poorer areas have more policing than the wealthier areas in the suburbs. But then at the same time, I could say, well, there's more crime in the poorer areas. There's more violence. The reason why the crack laws are the way that they are was because there was violence linked to crack. And so they wanted to clamp down.
Well,
so
hold on. I got to give you pushback on a couple of things here. Number one is, yes, when you have the crime bill written by Biden, when he literally puts 100,000 cops directly into brown and Black communities, yeah, that's systemic, right? So we know for a fact, we know that white kids sell weed the same amount as Black kids. We know that's true by percentage. There's no difference by percentage on who sells what. Well, if you put 100,000 cops in Black and brown communities, you're going to get more Black and brown arrests because you put 100,000 cops in there. And then what you do after that is you don't fund them after 2 years. So you fund those jobs for 2 years. Then there's no more federal funding. So what do? You start with civil asset forfeiture. Where are you going to take all that from? Well, you take it off from the people who don't have lawyers, who've been in jail before, who are scared of the cops, and who don't think not be arrested again because they already got 1 strike or 2 strikes. So then you make sure that they always say yes no matter what and give everything away. So now you spend all your time in those areas. That's systemic. It's nothing to do with Black people, white people. They sell drugs at the same percentages. We do know that's true. Not just that, you spend all your time. The reason why, it's going to sound crazy. This is people that people don't get. Why is Chicago so terrible? Why is there so much gang violence? Because the FBI and because the cops were so good at infiltrating gangs. What do you mean? When you have 2 major gangs, you have 1 border, only 1 border. So crime is sporadic along that border as there are some turf wars along that border. But within the gangland, there's not that much crime. But when you infiltrate to where no one trusts anybody, to where you infiltrate to where everyone breaks up, now you have 500 gangs. You now have 500 borders. You have 500 border wars. You've just increased the crime. So the more effective the infiltration is, the more violence you have. They're not fighting because they want to fight. These are border disputes because they're all in the black market. So the black market creates more crime. Well, where they create black market? They create the black market in black communities and brown communities. Again, systemic. So you're saying, wait a minute, Larry. So you're saying that these guys are criminals? Yes, they're in the black market by default. When you create black markets in brown and black communities, you create more crime. Poverty does not create crime. Black markets create crime. That's what happens.
I believe that poverty does create crime. That's
because it creates black markets. There were lots of poor areas that did not have black markets that do not have crime. What you can find poor areas without crime. You can't find black markets without crime.
Yes.
Cannot.
That's a typical libertarian answer over there, talking about the black markets right there.
And still true.
But listen, you were talking about the crime bill, right? When you talked about the crime bill, what it also did, it wasn't just about putting police officers and being tough on crime and protecting them from my mom, your cousin, his aunt, whatever Joe Biden said. That's my Joe Biden imitation when he talked about, we bring them to heel, Larry. But what it also did was it also cut the funding from a lot of programs inside jails that allowed people to get degrees and aids, certificates and whatnot. And that highly affected, more than the white community, a higher percentage of black people trying to come out. So it is systemic and it is a racial issue when you look at it, when you look at what Joe Biden did. And unlike that one area where we can talk highly, I'm not to sidetrack it, where Donald Trump has done something really good, an area which he created the First Step Act, right?
Yep.
Jared Kushner pushed him, doing more to help black people out right there. He doesn't even go near it this time because it goes against his whole campaign of being tough on crime.
No.
Tough on immigrant crime.
I've heard him say it. Let me grab 2 of these super chats if I could. Then I'm going to grab the 1 second. Here it goes. Ryan, thank you for $2. McDonald's is the poster company for Maha. LOL. Yeah, that's a good point, Ryan. I appreciate that. He goes on to say, thank you for the $5. I have to thank Trump on one detail. His candidacy has exposed the Unit Party and their intentions. Dems, Republicans, and the media are authoritarians. I think that I thank RFK for that, Ryan. I don't thank Trump for that. I thank RFK for that. I think RFK's run, there were many reasons why I'm happy that he ran. One of them is because I've talked about ballot access this year more than every libertarian in combined last 50. I have talked about ballot access on major TV, major radio so many times because of his run on ballot access. So that's number one why I'm glad he ran. And the second thing is it showed how that when one party says no, it's no. It doesn't matter Marianne Williams, doesn't matter RFK Jr., it doesn't matter Tulsi Gabbard. When one party says no, no. I think RFK Jr., am I wrong here, guys?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
It was burning for me. So
okay.
I
So
mean,
DL, we talked a lot about that crime thing. I know because you're not black, you can't talk about it. Yes, you can.
Oh no,
Please.
actually, I tell you what, I had some thoughts. So we want to talk about systemic racism, and I think that there's a lot of systemic racism in how we approach conversations, right?
Ooh,
so
okay.
Craig pointed out, he was like, all right, he was like, DL, are you black? You know, kind of like had to perform the test to see, you know,
Had to do it. Had to do the thing.
You speak to this issue.
Yep.
And he mentioned, he said, there's a lot of populists out, there's a lot of right-wing people out there. They either get silenced quickly or they don't speak up at all. And it's been something that I've been on a tear, especially since I did Ancestry and found out I was Native American. And I was like, oh, is that the case? I was like, well, then I can talk about what I damn well please. But not that I didn't already. But here's the thing. If we can't have these kind of conversations, right? If somebody who's white can't say, even wrongly, like maybe they're wrong, maybe they go out and they say, look, it's a black thing, you know, black people are just more, you know, violent than everybody else. Okay, fine, that's a statement. But instead of analyzing it and saying, okay, is it a correct statement? What is the information that's leading you to believe this? How does that statement, how does that fit with this information, right? Instead of having that conversation, which is a way to make sure that we get to the actual truth, then what we do is we say, well, you can't say that you're black. And it's funny because growing up, I identified as white because my mom is white, my adopted dad is white. But turns out I've seen pictures of my biological dad. He's a lot darker. I have this olive skin tone. And it never occurred to me when my friend, and this, I heard this so often growing up. No, but seriously, what are you? And I was like, I'm white. And they're like, seriously, like all my white, like none of my white friends actually believe that I was like, I'm the only one going through life blissfully thinking this, right? So I was a conservative and I would espouse my conservative views. And then I became a libertarian. And this has happened to me so many times. I'm talking with somebody and it's a liberal person and they don't like what I have to say. And they say, well, that's because of your white privilege. All of a sudden, I get to be white. Like y'all didn't want to claim me growing up, but now I get to be white all of a sudden. So I have been on this tear and I'm like, I think the problem is that white people have been beaten down and they're too afraid to have these conversations right now. And there are some people out there that they've lost their minds. They are racist, right? Or they have very racist ideas, but these conversations still need to be had. And I think there's a couple things. One, white people need to kind of buck up and like, if you believe something, you need to learn how to stand behind it.
That's why people like Trump.
Yes. That's what I was getting to.
Like Trump.
That's where I was going with this. Like, this is the reason why he's popular, because people follow other people who are brave into battle, right? If you've watched any war movie whatsoever, you know, like I'm trying to think of a movie off the top of my head, but there's war movies where you've got like that colonel, that old white colonel who's grumpy and he yells at everybody and he hates everybody. But man, everybody wants to follow him into battle, right? Yep. Why? Because he's not afraid of anything. Yep. And so this is Donald Trump is being that guy. And I think it's way too much. I think it's
when he said the Mexicans are the rape, those guys are the great bullers. When he said that, I don't get canceled on YouTube. When he said that, people were like, I hate that, but damn, he said it. I can't say that. And somebody was thinking it. And they were like, wow, he said it. And as crazy as it was, people were like, oh my God, you could never get elected doing that. I was like, oh no, we could. I was like, oh no, you could win saying that. You could.
Yeah.
Because just what you were saying, there's a lot of people who just want to follow strength. And that'll be my next piece I'll bring in here. This part I think is critical. I think Trump does not project empathy well at all.
No.
But he projects strength very well. And by percentage, more men, to your point, DL, want to follow strength versus empathy. And more women, by percentage, want to follow empathy over strength. Now, years ago, Biden, he's old now, but years ago, Biden from like 8 years ago, was really good at presenting empathy. That was one of his skill sets, right? He's like, oh, I get your feelings. I get you. He was very good at it. And women were like, okay, we vote for this guy. This guy's projecting empathy. We love it, right? Now he can't do it anymore. Harris doesn't project either well.
No.
Neither one of them well, which is why I think more men will go towards Trump because he projects strength better than she does.
Yeah. She also doesn't have a plan. The Democratic Party is dead. They're just going after low-hanging fruit. There's nothing much more for them to do, Larry, for her to do. I mean, what can she do at this point? She can't talk about any accomplishments, right? I mean, this whole Houdini kind of act to try to make you think that to make the voters think that she's any different than Joe Biden. Like, look what we just been experiencing all these last 4 years over here, right?
Absolutely.
What makes it any different now? Oh, it's something different right now. It's going to be, it's like hope and change all over again, given to you, packaged up through joy. There's not much, there's not much more. Even when we talked about in the beginning about the whole abortion issue right now, I mean, it's very little of it, Larry. I was in Chicago for the DNC convention.
Yep, I remember you
there
were.
Weren't many shirts out there that talked about abortion rights anymore. That's gone. It's low-hanging fruit time right now, and the Democrats, they're at the end of the gravy train. They ain't got much more to grab or to give.
I mean, it's like that ad that came out. Go ahead with your
the piece last, thank you for the $20. The drug market, very knowledgeable on that. Once upon a day, I was involved. Legalize and educate, but there's so much money involved on both sides. I don't see a solution soon. War and drugs, the money makers. Yes, but in the case of war, if you're buying and selling at least, it's not a black market. Well, there is one, but for us, there isn't. We actually sell in the open market. We sell, so we actually can use courts and cops to make sure we get our cash and such. So there's no black market for us on the war side, but on the drug side, yes. And for those of you who don't know, if you go back about 3 or 4 years, the number one producer of opioids in the world, opium in the world, was Afghanistan when we were in control. When we ran Afghanistan was the number one producer of opiates in the world. Now the Taliban run Afghanistan. There's no more. It's over. Zero. They have stopped all of it. There's nothing coming out of Afghanistan anymore. None.
Well, they were able to move their crops to other spots now. So they got other drugs coming into. And right now we don't need the opioids as much, Larry. We got synthetic drugs. Look at all these guys right now. They're running on
my point is we were making sure the drugs came in is my point. That was my point. We were making sure.
The CIA has been doing it for years. We did it in Iran and Contra too, baby.
Yes, absolutely. That was my point. When the CIA was in charge, they kept flowing. When the CIA got left, they're gone all of a sudden.
Right.
100%. I just wanted to add that piece. I thought that was funny. That's all. I just thought that was funny. So go ahead, DL. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I wanted to kind of follow up with what Craig had just said. And he's like, the Democrat Party is going after low-hanging fruit. They're not talking policy. There's not, the abortion shirts. I wasn't there, but I'm going to take his word for it that the abortion shirts, weren't big and popular. Think about the video ad that just came out recently, like a week ago. The what was the title of it? It was the one where all the guys were like, I'm a man.
Oh, right.
And it was so, like, to me, it was so repulsive. And on my show, one of the things that I pointed out about it, I said, the problem with this is, as a man, I don't need to be told that it's okay to be a man. That's not what I'm going to follow. Right. I don't for me and how I define, being a man, and I don't mean in the physical construct, like, an adult human male. I mean, when we say, are you a real man or not? Yeah. I define it very simply. I just say, you are somebody, when you're a man, you make decisions and you learn to stand by them. That is a core component of being a man. And this is, and let me go on a little tangent here. when young men turn to men, we don't have that moment. I'm drawing a blank on the term, so I apologize. There's a specific term. I'm just drawing a blank at the moment, but we don't have that moment where we say
It's called
now
a
you're
rite
man.
of passage.
Yes. Yeah, that was it. So we don't have that rite of passage. Mine was my dad. I would go to my dad at like 18, 19 years old. I would go to my mom and dad and I was like, hey mom, hey dad, you know, I got this question, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, my dad finally was like, look, son, you're a man now. You're going to have to learn to make decisions and you're going to have to learn to live by them. So here's the thing. I had the rite of passage. That was that moment. I didn't know that it was
mine was boot camp.
Right. And then, but here's the really important part about that rite of passage. And this is why that ad was so bad. When you become a man, the men around you confirm it. You're a man now, like my dad did. Then they expect you to act like a man.
Yes.
Right. And that
expectation
was not in that ad. It was just because I was like, if I want to vote for a woman, I will. In fact, I did in 2020. Yeah.
2020. I did too.
Jo Jorgensen, right?
I voted for Jo Jorgensen. I did.
And you know what? We didn't have, there was not, I don't remember a single ad or anything that said, hey guys, libertarian guys, and libertarians are mostly guys, like in the party.
True.
Nobody was like, it's okay to vote for a woman, guys.
Nobody said
we
that.
Need it, right?
We need it.
Because that was and this is why I think the Democrat Party, they treat people like children, and they're like, including men. And I think it's going to bite them. I don't think it's going to bite them too hard because, as we mentioned earlier, there is that younger crowd who is confused, and I think there will be a significant number who do kind of follow along because they haven't had that rite of passage. They haven't learned what that expectation is, right? They haven't lived life long enough to have to come and reconcile and say, I don't think society gave me my rite of passage and told me I was a man and expected me. And I think I think they're not there yet. And when they do come to that point, I think that's when you'll see them turn.
Adam, you're nodding your head. Go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple of things. First thing about that ad, the other problem, and I agree with everything that you said, Dia. The other problem that I have with that ad is that they reduced men to either interest or activities.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, okay.
And it was just like, I'm a man, and you know I like cars. And it's just like, it was something. It just felt so fake and inauthentic. Obviously, some of them, I think most of them were actors, but just the entire dialogue is a foreign. It reminded me if aliens came to this planet and said, you know, as a human, I like to eat food and drink water. It's like, why would you talk like that? No one talks like that. And that's what it felt like. And the Harris campaign also, I wrote a Substack piece in a thread. They have a misandrist problem, but even deeper, they have a black male misandrist problem.
Ooh,
because quite literally every ad that is supposedly targeting black men to get them to vote for Kamala Harris insults us.
Yeah.
Like it's just a straight up insult.
Yes.
The last one that just went out, referencing the balloon popping dating game. But essentially they were saying, hey, you not voting, especially for Kamala Harris, you won't get any ass.
Yes.
That's essentially what you said. So they're shaming the man who by their standards is the ideal guy.
But I got to go one step further on this. Adam. The last time a woman was on the ballot, Hillary Clinton, over 80% of black males voted for Hillary Clinton, more than white males. That's black males by percentage voted for Hillary Clinton than any other racial group. So if you're going to beat up any males, you should not be beating up black males for being misogynist. Black males, when Hillary Clinton was running, by percentage, voted far more than any other group of males in the country, more than Asian males, more than white males, more than Hispanic males, by huge amounts. So over, I think it was 89%, something. It's an insane amount it was for Hillary Clinton. So I'll go one step further. They're beating up the wrong people. If we're going to beat them up, it's the wrong people to beat up. And it's embarrassing.
Well, see, here's the problem, Larry, that you're not understanding. It's not supposed to be 80%. It's supposed to be 100%. See, the Democrats are entitled to the black vote, not just most of the black people, all the black people.
Got it.
And their most loyal base is black women. And you know what? These stupid black men, these crazy black men, Sonny Houston on The View is talking about, we need to reach out to these white women. We need to reach out to these Cuban Americans. We need to reach out to these crazy, ridiculous black men who voted for Trump. I was like, where did that come from? It's just, it's a democratic vitriol towards black men. And then they wonder why some of them are looking elsewhere or not voting at all. It's so mind-boggling.
I was gonna say maybe because their pitch to black men is more like a pitch to white women. I mean, it's on The View for crying out loud. It's like I think look, you have to give a little. You got to tip your hat a little bit to Kamala Harris because shortly after she talked about proposing giving forgivable loans to black entrepreneurs. But where did she get that idea from? Donald Trump, and I believe it was what's his name, the opportunity zones that they created.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yep.
The guy from South Carolina who
Tim Scott.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's where they got that idea from. But at the end of the day, if it's failing, just go to, once again, it's the economy, stupid. Get the money out. That's the way to buy people's votes.
Yes.
Well, what's even crazier about that, the Harris plan, if you look at the Harris plan, I think like half of the plan, remember, this is the plan for black men. So they're framing it as this is going to uniquely benefit black men. Half of it is not specific to black men whatsoever. Like, it's just, hey, we're going to do these things and you'll benefit from it, right? And it's like, then why did you even do this? And then on top of that, it was like, well, we're going to support these efforts. So how are you going to support? It's just filled with fluff language. It's just complete bullshit.
Absolutely. Can I say also too as well? It's a very dangerous spot for her to be in too as well, because her record towards black men as the DA in San Francisco and as the Attorney General in California is awful. I mean, the things she did to black men, she had more minor convictions for marijuana towards black men than any Attorney General in the state. She literally held on to prisoners in California prisons to use them to fight forest fires. And that was a lot of black men. I mean, she's been awful to black 100%. Men. So for her she better watch her step, because if the Trump campaign would just to take advantage of this moment and didn't care about looking weak on crime, especially immigrant crime, they can pound her into the ground. But yet he'd rather go after her for being a Marxist, which she's not. The Democratic Party are not a bunch of Marxists. They're a bunch of culture war critters. They're nothing to do with Marxism whatsoever. I believe Dave Smith, the Libertarian, said it so well.
He did. It's true. Let me grab a couple, two if I could real fast. Peace out, you guys. 2 super chats. Thank you, $10. Pierce Morgan did a great interview with Weinstein, and he expressed why intelligent people that don't like Trump are voting for him. The Dems made a mistake throwing Harris at us with no real vote. I'll go one step further. The Democrats thought it was smart to not have a primary. And that was really stupid. Having a primary would have vetted all of the people out. You would have had a better candidate. Whoever would have come out would be better than Harris. A primary would have been a better idea. I don't know if Harris would have won it. She probably would have lost it. But even if she won it, she would have been through all of this garbage before, and she'd be a better candidate now, or a better team now. A primary would have been a good idea for Democrats. They completely screwed up. You're saying no. Am I wrong?
You're wrong. Not if they wanted to lose, because that's the only way the Democratic Party can survive, is if they become an anti-Trump party once again and just raise a bunch of money after they lose to Donald Trump. It's almost like they wanted to lose by putting her forward.
You are not wrong. I wish you were wrong, but I see it. If they keep, I was joking. I said this last year. I said, if Donald Trump all of a sudden had like kidney failure, there'd be like 6 top Democrats running down. Take my kidney. Don't die, please. I got a mortgage to pay. Take my kidney. Right? You got to keep living. Otherwise, I have to come up with policies and stuff. So I don't want to have policies.
Kamala Harris didn't win one single delegate in her own state, and she dropped out a couple weeks before the California primary. And they tried to even hide the fact that, she dropped out. That's why she didn't win a delegate. When the majority, especially in Los Angeles County, in San Francisco County, those counties up there, San Diego County. The ballots were already mailed out a month plus before the election, before the primary itself.
Yep.
So they already did not cast their vote for Kamala Harris, and they tried to cover that up. She didn't win a single primary.
She's terrible. I agree. Last one. P says another $5. Looking forward to connecting with DL, Craig, and Adam. You have the best guests. Thank you. That's true. I do. That's an accurate statement. I do have the best guest. Completely accurate. So that's great. So I want to grab a couple of these if I can. Peace out to you. Ask one more time. He says, Craig. So hold on. He says, Craig. So may I ask, how will you vote? Ooh, do you want to answer that question?
I'm leaning towards Chase Oliver because I believe right now that we have to, once again, I believe this exists outside the two-party duopoly. We got to get away from it more than anything. I mean, one could be said about why you even playing into this system, this death cult system anyways. Even as a libertarian, if you support the Libertarians or the Greens or any other party trying to get 5%, you're still playing into this whole system that we have that a lot of people feel needs to be kiboshed. But anyways, at the end of the day, I believe it exists outside the two-party duopoly. And, like I've said this to you before, Larry, I don't understand why I'm acting more libertarian than a lot of libertarians. I mean, at the end of the day, if you put it on paper, Chase Oliver is much more of a libertarian and is going to vote, is going to, push policy positions that align much more with us than the two-party duopoly at the end of the day.
I'm not fighting you at all. The reason why I was going to vote RFK Jr. because I thought he was going to be on the ballot in New York State and I was going to be able to get an independent party in New York State.
Yeah.
But now they've thrown him off.
Yeah.
So I don't have a reason. I mean, I on my ballot, it's only going to be 2. New York State doesn't allow third parties at all. So we don't get anything. So I got to write somebody in. Chase Oliver is the closest to my thought process, right? I don't know.
I think some of the best ideas, unfortunately, because he's a little unhinged and he's a bit off his rocking chair, he's a little crazy, is Dr. Shiva. Dr. Shiva's come up with some great ideas. It's just that
but he's a jerk.
He can't stop attacking everybody. I know. Listen, end the occupation. The biggest message, the biggest problem we have right now is the fact that Israel is controlling our government. They are occupying our government. I mean, all these people with dual citizenship with Israel and the United States, that's a problem. So when you say, give me a ceasefire, no, we don't want a ceasefire because you're just going to pause and then go back to bombing the Palestinians after a certain amount of time anyways. We need to go at the systemic problem, and that is
hold on. But that's not this show. That's not this show. Sorry,
my bad. I know we're on YouTube.
Yes, Ryan says, in my view, the Dems are in disarray. All they have is a terrible record to defend from the Biden administration. Of course, Orange Man bad. Thank you for the $5, Ryan. But I think Orange Man bad, it does work. Like I see it here in New York City. There's a lot of people who their argument is literally Trump is going to end democracy. Trump is going to end the world. I mean, and they're not like making this up. They honestly believe it. DL, you're in Jacksonville, right? Are you in Jacksonville now?
Yeah.
You've got to see that in Jacksonville, right?
So, well, my neighborhood is like full on Trump neighborhood.
Yeah, but Jacksonville's blue, though, isn't it? Isn't
the whole blue? The mayor won. The mayor's blue, but the city council is still heavily Republican. Still heavily.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, still heavily Republican, and then also heavily establishment Republican at that. And then the school board, which is a nonpartisan election, there's a heavy Republican presence there as well. With I think 2 more. I think there were 2 more in just the last election that flipped that were Republican, and then there was one before that. So we've still got a pretty good Republican field here, if you will.
Okay.
So
you're not as bad. Adam, you got to see that amongst your crew too, right? People around you think that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the people who were saying that 8 years ago.
Yes.
So
yes,
that I think what matters in this particular election, well, just about every election, what really matters are the people who would consider themselves independents, the people who are relatively apolitical, who could take it or leave it as far as voting goes, and that's where, I don't know if this is a term or not, but this is like a term that I use in my head. That's where snapshot politics comes into play, right?
Okay.
Most people aren't like us who read articles, who follow
That's true.
daily thing. Most people, they live their daily lives. Once in a while, they turn on TV. They might see NBC News show some clip about whatever, and whatever it's framed as is whatever it's framed as. And that's the snapshot that they have. And then you add up enough snapshots, every time they see Donald Trump, he's being brash, right? And they don't humanize Donald Trump. And so because they don't do that, as far as in the media and the snapshot, unless you're curious and then you look and then you can see how, like, all right, there's moments where, yes, he might say something brash, but, you know, I'll even use myself. I was one of those people. But when you start looking more into him, he's a flawed individual, highly flawed. But shit, sometimes he's funny as hell. It's like,
Also true. Yeah. He is funny. It's true.
And so, like, that's humanizing. Like, the guy is sometimes purposefully and accidentally funny, has great timing, right? And so,
right. So hold on. I want to now ask each of you just a couple of seconds now. Answer the question to the best of your ability, whatever you think. What do you think is going to happen with the men's vote? Is the men's vote this year? Is there going to be a breakdown by race? Is it not? Is it going to be a big change in effect? Is the gender gap going to be a thing, or is it not really going to matter much?
I think whatever the norm is, like whatever the norm as far as normal range, as far as each male demographic, I think the male vote will be abnormally stronger towards Donald Trump in this election than previous election.
Okay.
I think the messaging has been that bad towards men.
Yeah. DL,
I have to agree with
him. Oh, go ahead, Craig. Go ahead.
I'm just going to agree with him 100% too, as well, because, like, going back to the fact that I think a lot of people, what it should do is you should send more males to third parties, right? That's what should happen right now. I think that with the information that we have, with the decisions that have been made. Listen, we saw Donald Trump run for president before, and at the end of the day, you know, I used to say, gun to my head, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. I'd say Donald Trump, but I think we have to go with the old Chase Oliver saying, "Let the gun go off. Enough is enough." We have to see this for what it is.
To be
we
clear,
should be moving away from the two-party duopoly, men and women.
Hold on. Yeah. I got to be clear. That was actually a Gary Johnson first. Gary Johnson was asked that question in 2016, and he said, "Pull the trigger." Just saying.
Good for Chase Oliver for borrowing it, because
oh no, he can have it. Just want to give my boy.
The geniuses they borrow, Larry, and he was a genius for borrowing it.
100%. Yes. Dio, go ahead.
No, I agree. I think that's what we're going to see. I don't know if there's going to be. I can't speak to any breakdown by race, but I think that you're going to see more men go to Trump, especially since there's been a bit of a break. Right? We've gotten to see. I mean, people aren't stupid. They can see. Hey, she's been in office. What did she actually do? Right. And what is she saying she's going to do? Oh, she's going to fix this. She's going to make this better. Well, wait a minute. You were the one there. Right. And there's basically no substance. So as Adam said, you know, people that are saying that are against Trump today, like, you know, Orange Man bad against Trump. They've been like that. I know a guy who was a Republican and he left the Republican Party during Trump's first run, and he's been a Democrat since. And that, like, it got annoying because I was like, dude, can you shut up about Trump? Like, like, I get it, you don't like him, but Jesus.
All right, let me ask this is the last one I got to ask. This is another $5 super chat to all guests. Am I right to conclude that if you could only choose between Harris or Trump, Trump gets your vote? Anybody want to touch that first?
The gun goes off.
Gun goes off. Adam, go ahead.
Actually, I wrote an article for the Federalist saying that I'm pragmatically choosing Trump. There are a lot of things I don't agree with about him, but if you're giving me the option between the two, who I believe who is more likely to do the thing, because now they're both having a similar message. Now she cares about immigration. Now she cares about the economy, right? But I don't believe her.
What state are you in? Adam?
I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, you're in Jersey. Okay. DL.
Neither. I'm staying home.
Yeah, I'm with you. Gun goes off. I'm staying home. Yeah, I'm staying home. Yeah, whatever. I'm staying home. And I live in New York. It doesn't matter, right? No matter what I do, regardless of my vote, at any level, no matter what I do, the Democrat wins. It is irrelevant what I do. Where at my city level, state, and federal level, the Democrats always win. The last time my state senator won by 98 points.
Wow.
I'm not joking. She won 99-1. That is how bad it is. So it doesn't matter what I do. So I don't care if I vote. I'll vote but it's a virtual signaling. That's all it is. I want to talk to the audience, please, guys. If you like what we're talking about today, please click the button that is like, I know I bug you constantly, but it's the only way I get past the algorithms. You know, it's how I get past. Share us on Facebook or Twitter. Please subscribe if you haven't already. But no matter what you do, please follow these gentlemen. All the details in the show description on YouTube and also on Facebook. Check out what they're doing. Their websites are there. Check them out. Follow Adam at wrong_speak. Follow DL at Liberty Dad Pod. And follow Craig at Yo Pasta. I want to say, everybody, thank you so much for coming tonight. I appreciate all the time you gave me. It was a completely amazing show. I will be on tomorrow at 1 p.m., my live radio show, if you want to call in. I might be on tomorrow night. I'm not sure because we do have the Maha events. I may not be on. But I will be on Wednesday night with the incredibly, what's the word I'll use? Vocal Nomiki Konst. She will be on Wednesday with me talking about the election. Also, I will see you all very soon.